Hi, good morning, good afternoon, everyone. Happy New Year. Thank you for joining us to kick off the new year to talk about all things TMF. Yay. Before we do, we'll just do a quick roundtable introduction and get started. Since I'm the one speaking, I'll start first. I am Janice Del Rosario, the director of our TMF services at LMK, which is a division of TransPerfect. And what that really means is I'm just part of the leadership team that oversees the operations of our team of services and consulting projects. And I am joined here with two of my colleagues. I'll pass it over to Ruby.
Hello. Happy New Year. We're going to say that through this week, and then we're cutting that off on Monday because I've said that like 24 times every meeting this week. Happy New Year. My name is Ruby Scott. I am the Associate Director here at LMK Clinical Research Consulting. As Janice mentioned, we are a division of the TransPerfect family of families. I'm looking forward to talking to you about our year in review, our plans for the future, and everything TMF. So I'll turn it over to Ben
Thanks, Ruby. Hey, everyone. Happy Thursday to you. Ben Rogers, our Senior Manager of Education Services at LMK. Excited to be here with Janice and Ruby to talk about the education side of things. So TMF and education, everybody's favorite topics. Certainly look back at 2024 and the great success we have and look forward to 2025. So welcome, everyone. Excited to be here. Please stay engaged, ask questions, anything that we can help to kind of talk about as we prepare for 2025. But with that, Janice, Ruby, where would you start today?
Yeah, I was going to mention the format of today's session will primarily be Q&A so that we can just answer questions in real time of anything related to what activities you've done this past year, again, or what to look forward to. But we'll do a quick recap of 2024 in terms of what LMK has focused on with the organizations that we support. And so I will pass it on to Ruby to cover the TMF services side. And then Ben.
So what happened in 2024? Start there. As far as our year in review, well, what happened in 2024? Submissions, approvals, inspections. Oh my! That pretty much covers the whole gambit of everything that we dealt with in 2024. I'm going to go the wrong way. 2024 was last year. This is 2025. It was a busy year. A lot of changes incoming. I think for me, this is truly, we're finally getting past COVID. The COVID years, there was a lot of turmoil across the planet. There was a lot of shifting of work to remote and adjustments made for the pandemic. And we're starting to see that cycle back now, right? That we're returning to the office now. Some of the measures that were taken for COVID are dissipating. They're going away now. So we're getting back into the office and readjusting to, I hate the new normal. We saw a lot about what can be done in clinical trials if you really have that pressure put on you, and applying that as we return to our office buildings to go back to the job. I think that it's an adjustment period. Very much looking to 2025 with our lessons learned. That's me in a nutshell.
Yeah, great. What about you, Ben, on the education side as far as recap?
Yeah, so I actually wrote something down because I didn't know how long Ruby would go, and I was like, I want to touch on this because I actually hadn't had the thought about like talking about COVID
recaps
in this capacity. And you make a good point that we're kind of seeing I don't want to say fallout, but, kind of the outcomes of the implementations that we saw during COVID-19, the pandemic, whether that was implementation of eTMF platforms, electronic signatures, document authoring and systems to kind of streamline processes for that remote environment. And so that is something that I think is very impactful, right? So now what we're seeing probably in 2024, what I realized kind of thinking about that topic is a lot of organizations that participated in our TMF University program or had outreach related to corporate education, I think was a response almost to that COVID-19 pandemic because they've had new processes. So they were forced to maybe implement these electronic solutions, but didn't really have a way to manage those, right? They just kind of went with it. And now now that we're kind of on the tail end of that response, they need the training to fine tune their process, to address those gaps, those concerns, those issues that maybe they've been putting off. So I think that was a fantastic point that you've made. We're seeing kind of the new world, so to speak, of the response to COVID, that electronic forward process that we see. So that is one thing I definitely wanted to mention. So thanks, Ruby, for talking about the pandemic. Other things, of course, training continues to be a priority for organizations. It's been really positive to see organizations prioritize whether corporate education or TMF University for their individuals within the organization. So we're seeing people prioritize TMF processes, metrics, having what is a TMF champion? What does a TMF lead look like? And so we've had a lot of great questions. I know we'll probably touch on some of the topics of like sponsor oversight, right? That's a really common element in TMF University that we're asked about. Like, how do we have oversight of our CROs and our vendors? So I'm sure we'll dive into that topic today. I was really excited because we revamped our program in 2024 for TMF University. We shortened the courses, so it was less time listening to me, which I'm sure people were pretty excited about. I can be pretty long-winded. I can get pretty passionate. So I've really had to reel myself in a little bit. We introduced electronic portfolios ourselves to make it a little bit more streamlined for folks completing their classes and their homework that's associated with TMF University. That's been a very big improvement, both internally for our review and externally for the people participating. We've introduced accelerated pathways for folks with a few years experience that kind of understand the TMF with a pretty expert level of knowledge. We've allowed them to accelerate their pathway by participating in one course for 4 hours where we kind of throw a lot at you. So it's been a lot of good stuff in 2024. We're continuing those patterns in 2025. We're not changing too much because we did see a lot of great success in 2024 with those changes. But of course, we're keeping regulation at the forefront, with R3 release potentially, other regulation in the industry. We always want to make sure we're current there. But as far as the delivery, I feel like we really found a sweet spot last year. So I'm excited to continue that in 2025.
Yeah. Thanks, Ben. And I think in general, part of the reason we wanted to do this together is there was a lot of collaboration between the education and services space. A lot of organizations were looking for that trainings and they've been customized. And then on the flip side, they're thinking training and how they can implement those, processes or change management in terms of how they view TMF or how they want to manage their TMF. So a lot on our side was trying to work through those with the organizations, customizing, understanding, and assessing their landscape to that the solutions that we provide as far as process development, how they perform their reviews, even down to just, processing of their documents and coming up with like a model that works for them, that works as of right now. And with COVID and, the remote work environment and where that is shifting and being able to scale that over the coming years. And so a lot of what we did was very focused on everything that has happened this past couple of years and trying to gear up everyone for, again, exactly that continuous improvement. So, yeah.
And I think I hadn't thought of it that way before, but the way Ben put it, it's very much that during the pandemic years, we were kind of thrown into that you don't have a choice, that you've got to do it this way. So it is very much a build the plane as you fly it kind of thing. And this is the time where, okay, now we've landed the plane. It was successful. We managed to do it. But could somebody please start that user manual for the plane? It's the catch-up piece to let's actually document how we did this because this did work or it didn't, and let's find a solution.
Very proud of just the support and just being part of all of our clients and our organizations that we were able to support. Just very proud of exactly what Ruby said. We supported inspections and a lot of process development or refinement, continuing with the processing, periodic TMF, QC reviews, all of that. Just very proud to be a part of it and continuing that as, we move forward. So great.
I want to take a quick moment, though, to say, I see folks in the chat just saying welcome. And we want to welcome you. We've got some folks from North Carolina, from Canada, so all over. So just wanted to say thanks for kind of introducing yourself. Canada. And as we're chatting, ask those questions. I know Janice had already mentioned that. So please, remain engaged. Ask us what you're curious about for 2025. But I know sometimes those comments come fast and furious. So I just want to take a moment to acknowledge, yes, we see those. So please let us know. If you have questions, comments, you want to echo anything that we're saying, we love to hear that, because sometimes there's just strength in numbers, right? When we're all kind of a little bit miserable together, when we echo, I had to go through that as well. So, please participate in any way that's comfortable for you. But sorry, Janice, to cut you off.
No, not at all. It was exactly that. We can start to kind of run through some of these questions in the comments.
Perfect.
Let's see, which one should we start with, or will it pop up? Questions?
Yeah, I think because we got some admins in the background that usually populate our questions for us. So there we go. Some of them coming up. So,
what are your plans for your 2025 SOP review? Who wants to take that? I guess between you and me, Ruby.
We're pretty mature as far as our TMF environment goes. We're pretty on top of that. We do have regular scheduled cycles for our SOPs, as I'm sure many of you do in your orgs. Well, of course, we will review them and tweak as needed, but typically minor changes, nothing major yet to impact our processes. And you're going to hear me say this a lot, there is no one size fits all solution. It's all customizable, right? It's what works for you that should be the takeaway. And depending on where you're at in your environment, maybe you didn't have an electronic TMF until COVID, and so you're probably a little bit behind LMK as far as SOP.
I'll toggle back and forth between recap and future, but yeah, that's exactly what we've worked on with the organizations and kinds that we support a lot. Our focus, and the focus for them, is end-to-end TMF processes. We have some situations where at this stage they were only able to focus on just but very important part, but the management or maintenance. But really what we want to strive for is end-to-end, where it's from the setup all the way down to archival. And a lot of the studies that started, it's a just-in-time approach of, let's get the setup and the maintenance focused, because we have time for the closeout archiving. And so that for us, as far as exactly what Ruby's saying, I mean, we have mature process. We're geared to be able to provide sort of that recommendation or feedback and customize things, but definitely for organizations that are in SOP, either development or refinement, end to end is the way to go. Setup, management, closeout, and archival.
I think this is going to be a theme. The whole build the plane as you fly it. And that's exactly it. Janice nailed it. That you focus on startup and maintenance, because that's what you're doing right now, and that's what you need. So it's kind of a stressful for me, because I want it all written out in advance, right? Yeah. But you're focusing on setup and maintenance in the beginning, because that's what we need right now, and we'll have time to get to archival. Well, now is that time, right? That we've got the beat to catch your breath, that we've got to start doing that. But you've got to think about it all end to end. And I didn't think about this until Janice just said it, but as we draft SOPs end to end from startup through archival, you also want to make sure that you include in that process your caveats as well. Like, what if it drops out of the process between startup and archival? What if it's a divested study that you sell it to somebody else? Do you have processes for that?
Yeah.
Great. Yeah. All right. Let's keep the questions coming.
Ooh, that's a good one.
As I mentioned, I can start a conversation here, kind of from the training side of, what I've heard, and maybe I can provide the problem. This is my favorite thing. Maybe I can provide the problem, and Janice, maybe you can talk about ways to overcome.
Because it does. I mean, part of the reason they go to your training is to learn these things, so you get these questions. So sounds good to me.
I think for me, and vendor is a wide range, right? Like as a sponsor, a CRO could be a vendor, an eTMF vendor, CTMS, whatever. But I think for me, one of the common things that I see from a sponsor perspective, they ask about for oversight of their CROs is, how do we get them to do what we want to do? right? So what we want them to do, that's always the question of how do we go about making sure they're doing things like it's their system, but we want them to do X, Y, and Z. So it seems like there's maybe a breakdown in like that communication and what the sponsor desires versus maybe what the CRO is doing. So it's like maybe a communication barrier. Do you all see that? Have you provided solutions to that or kind of comments on
Dang it, Ben, you stole mine. That was going to be mine.
It's the big one. That's what do we find the biggest? I guess that is the biggest.
Well, I mean, there's so many others that I thought you guys were going to pick from. the quality difference between outsourcing and insourcing. The getting them to do what you want, but that is really it. And I think we all do actually have some experience working in CROs, and I know this, that it's the perspective that they have, that I don't know that that's a communication hurdle, that I don't know if that hurdle, spend more money. What we learned from COVID, that you can overcome anything if you spend more money. It's more efficient for the CRO to do one process across the board, regardless of how many clients you have. If you're processing all the documents the same way, then you're going to be more efficient, and they gain efficiencies that way. That if you happen to be the odd man out and everybody else wants monitoring visits filed by the monitoring visit date, and you want it the start date, and you want it by the end date, and you've got a 2-day visit, you're the one-off, right? It's more efficient for them to index your document wrong and then go back and correct that one document to get the other 900 documents correct than it is to check the index for all 900 documents, right? So I don't know if that is a communication issue. You could tell them till you're blue in the face that we want it done this way, but ultimately that's not in their best interest to do it that way.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know more to add there other than, I mean, the broader response of from the start of planning with those, third-party vendors, define what your expectations are, what the performance, metrics, what they will be measured on. And, for many organizations that now, like the example that you use with using an eTMF, or as we move to digital TMF, right? There's a lot more availability and transparency to be able to measure that and get real-time data so that you can provide that, more ongoing oversight to your vendors. So, but those are like the details of what you want to start to think about if you haven't already, and if you haven't, take a step back with your vendors and have some discussions of what the definitions are, what the expectations are, what makes sense, all agreements, so that you can measure them on it. So you have the data to measure it. So
I think that's perfect. I think that's what I've seen too in my experience. It's like the expectations are never really clearly documented or established. And so it comes out of nowhere that it's like, oh, we expect this. And it's like, well, where did that come from? So have that discussion, document that expectation. So great comments there.
Let's see what else. Hi, Elizabeth. Let's see. How do you collaborate with other departments to ensure the TMF is complete and up to date?
The $1 million question.
Right? That's where we live.
I know.
Yeah. I mean,
we're a translation company, so you need to be able to speak all the different dialects of TMF. TMF E's, data management E's. That I do. It's unfortunate to me that the TMF is so frustrating for so many other functional lines, just because it is where I live, that I do feel that attachment to it. And I don't like when people say, I hate the TMF, because, well, it's where I live. I hate your house. Well, we'll leave.
That's funny. Yeah.
But how to do that is to always keep in mind that nobody is intentionally trying to make your job difficult or make your life harder, that we are all working toward ultimately the same goal. We want the drug to make it to market, right? And we're all doing the things that we do in order to achieve that goal. So please don't yell at your TMF people, and TMF people, try to be patient with your functional lines. Try to look at it from their perspective. Understand the big picture. I think that's a big one, that a lot of times what I see, and not to brag on CROs too much here, but Especially in
Oh.
CROs, there is a very much siloed approach that
Mm-hmm.
this functional line does this and this functional line does that. Whereas the TMF, we are different in that we touch all of those functional lines. So being able to communicate cross-functionally with all of those different stakeholders can be challenging, certainly, but not understanding the downstream impacts. I think getting people to understand where you're coming from, your perspective, I think that's important. That I've worked in places where, hey, I just found a much faster way to do this. If we just skip this one step and go straight here, then we save this much time with our task. But what you don't realize is you've just created a huge problem 3 steps down in this workflow for somebody else to clean up. And not understanding how the pieces fit together, I think, is to your detriment. That the better you understand the end-to-end process, and how your tasks impact others, and explain to them how their tasks impact you as well, that that they're not trying to make your life harder, that they're doing what they're doing because they think they're doing something good. Explain why this doesn't work. Explain why what you're doing, what impact that has down the road. I think it's the understanding, getting everyone to understand all the moving parts and how they fit together. I think goes a long way to avoiding those conflicts and those, I hate the TMF comment.
I love it. I know. So I saw, Elizabeth, your response to, as Ruby was speaking, it says, guilty. As someone who worked in ClinOps, I found the TMF to be the least favorite task. And I think it's
Right.
on point. And I think the reason we're saying this is over the years, especially as the TMF has evolved in terms of transparency, visibility, and I mean, I love that, other functions have started to really focus on, because there's no way around it. It's there now for you, not paper, where you kind of could just put it aside. So I mean, the things that we have been able to realize and kind of adapt to is tailoring your communications to the different functions, training, education, awareness, change management, really find ways to keep them engaged, which again, there's a lot more data that can be shared in the regarding your studies TMF, whether it be through emails, having it be a sticky topic during a study team meeting. Those are the ways to keep all functions engaged, the same way that you do for any other business process. You talk about your submission, your dates, and you talk about your dosing, and it's not any different with TMF, where you can have announcements of the TMF is now set up and live, and now we're now at the mid-year of this is the progress we've made for those who do contribute to the TMF. This is the number of documents you guys have submitted, and this is the number of periodic TMF reviews. Like, those are ways that you can keep all of your functions engaged. And us sharing this as examples is a result of exactly that. Is it's known to be least favorite task. It's known, all the things Ruby was saying, and then like we have, like, it's like us figuring out like the house of, okay, well, let's decorate it better. It's find ways, but I mean, but also sticking to our guns that no, it is going to be this way. This is how it is. And so, yeah, that's sort of like loops everything around. But I think thanks, Elizabeth. That was funny.
Yeah. Oh, I love it, Elizabeth, with the questions first. Somebody starting in TMF management, that is often an entry into the industry for most folks in TMF management. What steps would they take to position themselves for long-term career success? So, as a training person,
that's a good one. No, yeah,
I'm
I'm
happy
like,
to chat on this one.
I could tell you're
and so
excited.
I was just looking. So I just crossed 13 years in the industry, which is so funny because I remember when I joined calls and people are like, "Oh, I have 12 years experience." I was like, "Oh my gosh, like." That's a long time. And now 13 years, I look back and I'm like, that's really not that long. Like when I say I have 13 years of experience, sometimes I'm like, is that enough? But when I think about when I started, it was a lot of just administrative work, like filing and QC of documentation. And the way that the TMF space and TMF professionals have changed since I joined 13 years ago has been leaps and bounds, especially in the last 5 or so years. So I think the skill set and kind of the things that they can do to position themselves for success is really just be open to to feedback. I know that sounds so like trivial and like easy to say, but you need to listen to when you do things well, when you don't do things well. Be someone who is adaptable, and is willing to kind of put in the work in those like stressful environments or stressful situations, or take on those challenging projects that maybe other folks don't want to do, because that's the way you're going to learn, is by exposing yourself. Within training, like in TMF University, one of the great things about it is we have hands-on application, and that's one of the best ways to learn. The TMF, in my experience, you can talk about applying metadata, and you can talk about reviewing documents all day long, but there's nothing like actually doing it and seeing those documents in the real world setting. So taking every opportunity, I think, is great. Obviously, I could be biased here and say participating in things like TMF University or our corporate education offerings can benefit you. I think the biggest thing there is it's an outside perspective. So one of the things I talk about with TMF University is we are teaching from a best practice, system agnostic, and regulatory expectation approach, which means we're not taking the ideals of your organization or your experiences and applying them. We're thinking holistically as an industry, what do we need to do? And I think sometimes seeing those different perspectives and attending conferences even allow you to grow, because you see different experiences. If you've only ever worked at the same organization, you probably only know the way that you do things. So looking for those opportunities externally, I think, is also really great, just because it challenges your current ideals.
Great.
Keep in mind that behind every challenge is an opportunity, and even though it's hard now, the skills that you're learning, I mean, Ben's piddly 13 years as Janice and I sit here with 20.
I know, I told you, I used to think 13 was a long time, and now that I'm at 13, I'm like, other people are like 20, 30. I'm like, when did I get there? So yeah.
Right? Yeah, I just had that realization. It's 2025. I started in 2005.
Wow, 20 years, a big one.
Decades.
I know.
I'm not old enough to have been in TMF for 2 decades.
That's what I tell myself all the time. I'm like, I'm still in college. What do you mean?
Right? But it is that there are going to be tough times without question, but you're learning from those. That even after 20 years, there's still documents that come in. I don't know what that is. Give me a minute. Let's have a look at that and dig into it. When I have staff that come to me and, where should I file this? Ooh, what the heck is that? And it might be some sponsor specific document that they have a process, and this is part of their process to file this document, and I don't know what it is. So it is that you can. I'm still learning. 2 decades later, I'm still learning. So do keep in mind that every challenge is an opportunity, and you are growing. That they call them growing pains for a reason, I guess.
Yeah, and not to stick. I mean, how you first started TMF and understanding it and managing it, I think, especially being where we are now, knowing that it isn't, it's not just stuck, it is evolving. And so staying up to date on the industry standards, and we talked about E6, R3, and then the TMF reference model. Those are things like to stay up to date. If you're looking at this as a long-term, the way that we have somehow, I don't think it was anything that I think safely say all 3 of us didn't think we were going to be where we there wasn't plan that I was going to stay in the TMF, but now definitely over the past decade, I've, pretty set that I'm a TMF professional. But I would say just making sure that we have that, growth mindset of making sure that we stay up to date, because it is ever so changing, but also be aware that the functional lines that are not TMF focused are not there in that. And so being cognizant of that and adjusting your communications and awareness of that, and finding ways to get them on board to what you need, which is primarily getting their documents in and being ultimately inspection ready.
Perfect.
Yeah.
And that kind of ties back in actually with the tailoring your communications to your audience, which, I mean, that's not TMF, that's everything, right?
Yeah.
Kind of goes hand in hand with role specific training. It's like, give them what they need. Don't overwhelm them with a bunch of extra stuff. Give them what they need.
Yeah, I think that ties into the question we see here of like, what's the primary area of focus? And we may each have a different one, right? Of like what we think is a big area. And Ruby, I think that's a fantastic point of giving people the information that they need. I think from a training perspective, you know, historically, we kind of overwhelm people with the amount of information they're exposed to. And so I think for me, it's maybe not the TMF system itself, but it's like, are we providing people with adequate training? I obviously, as a training professional and as a TMF professional, I'm very passionate about this, but a lot of times, like if you look at 2024, so kind of with the theme of the series today, if you were to look back at your organization's 2024 and look at the obstacles that you face, the findings that you had in audits and inspections, and identifying where do those come from? What's that root cause? A lot of times it's going to circle back to training and resources and like hands-on guides that people can utilize. So I would say prioritize. Are we supporting people in their use of the trial master file and carrying out document QC, applying metadata, completing quality reviews? Do we have the resources that allow people to do this? Because again, as we talked about earlier, a lot of organizations implemented an eTMF platform in recent years that have quality review modules, that have document QC modules, and they just kind of kick them off. But are they using them to their fullest extent? Are people actually leveraging them correctly? So for me, that's something I would really prioritize, is evaluating our performance in 2024, looking to see, are there areas of improvement in our resourcing and our training that can set us up for success as we're entering 2025.
Yeah. Great. How about you, Ruby? Any focus, primary, like your thoughts as far as whether it be current, what your just recommendations, opinions are?
Well, I'm just excited about our new consulting. We have some exciting new consulting offerings, leveraging our Viva admins. They're not exactly new, but we really haven't highlighted them like we could have. So I am looking forward to that. Really leveraging our strengths.
For me, it's a lot of just, continuation of this past year. But I think also if knowing that ICH E6 R3, I mean, the draft has been available all this, what is it, 2023. So a lot of this past year was, we worked with some organizations that have already, some have just digested it. Others we've actually worked with some that have started to apply it, like just even down to like the terminology changes and updates that are being made. You know, what was the one we talked about recently? Instead of patient or subject, it's going to be trial participant. So some have already started to add that to their SOPs. Or just their process documents, or just reference documents to records is a key one for TMF. And so just, I would say, continuing to digest. It's meant to, any day now that it'll be confirmed when it'll be officially published. Things like that is just kind of keeping to digest. And for us, we're staying up to date or are working towards it so that we can support our, customers, our clients in that way. The TMF reference model is another one for version 4, where we've seen communications around that. So I think that'll be a major focus in 2025. And for those of you on and are familiar, it's the CDIS TMF reference model. The feedback collection is open through the end of January. So if you go to the CDIS TMF reference model website, you can provide, any feedback to it. So we're excited to look forward to the communications that are released around that. And but we also already turning internally as in terms of like what our support will be, what our recommendations are, what even us, we have already provided questions to the TMF reference model committee, things like that. So those would be the focus specifically to TMF that I had in mind, as well as all the ongoing continuous improvement.
Yeah, I love that. And Janice, just to echo really quick, the CDIS, the TMF reference model, and kind of the call to action for the question asked earlier of like, that career development and learning, that's those opportunities. Take those opportunities, even though you may not have the expertise, you can listen in, you can provide your feedback, even if you have some experience. And we all have our grievances with things, and that's the way that change happens, is by talking about it. So I just wanted to echo, I think that was a good point that you made. And
this one's for you. This one's all you. I still want to steal the thunder, but I won't.
I need to put on my salesman hat to say, why is TMF University better? And I mean, obviously, as the facilitator for TMF University, I take great pride in the program. I think it centers around the development of the program, as I mentioned, because it's system agnostic. It's a regulatory expectation, best practice approach. We really do take the perspective holistically and globally of what the TMF should be. We go beginning to end. We start at a foundational level of what the TMF is, and we build upon that with audit inspection readiness, developing and mapping TMF processes and SOPs. So we cover a lot of the expectations in the program. Now, obviously, the content is based off of guidance that's out there, industry best practices. So we're not necessarily saying you have to do things one exact way. That's the other great thing. It challenges you to think about your own kind of organizational setting or your own career development, and you're able to apply this within any organization that you're in. Now, the other thing that I think that really sets us apart is the accreditation piece. We're currently the only recognized and accredited program for TMF professionals with our partner IAOCR. And so they're an external, in the world, globally. So they're an external verifier of our program, which means we have more rigorous outputs that we must meet. So in the development of the program, we had to meet certain criteria as we review the homework. There is homework associated with the program as well. That's verified. So it's making sure that when you're answering questions, you're answering them in a way that establishes you have an understanding of that topic. So they're not true, false, or fill in the blank. They're actually asking you to discuss the concepts of TMF management. You do hands-on application of document QC. So looking for those things like pagination and legibility. You do some SOP mapping exercises. So there's that hands-on practice as well. It's also an opportunity because it's live and instructor-led, which I think sets us apart as well. You can ask questions to me in real time, just like you're doing right now, except they could be much more specific. You could say, hey, my organization, we're currently updating our TMF index. We're thinking about this. What are your thoughts? And then we can go through that situation together. We can talk about hypotheticals. So that kind of live instructor-led, it's remote, but via Zoom or Teams, we'll have our call together in real time to ask those questions, to be engaged. I think that accreditation also is really what sets us apart because we have a lot more control over the process, perhaps, and things that we have to address with that accreditation that really bolsters that program quite a bit. So there's a lot in there. And again, a lot of people, what they say is it has really challenged them. That's the feedback we consistently get, is it made them think beyond their current organization. And so I love hearing that feedback because that's the way you're going to make change. If you're only doing the same things over and over, you're probably never going to improve or never challenge yourself to improve. So that's another reason I like it. So sorry to go on a long-winded answer there.
No, that was great. That was great. Yeah. But I love it because it gives everyone here like a preview of what the and how Ben presents and the material, and he's just great.
Yeah, and I don't sugarcoat things.
Not biased at all.
No, yeah, but I try not to sugarcoat, and I think that ties into the points we talked about earlier with collaboration. Yes. Is not sugarcoating things, being transparent and recognizing people don't love the TMF. It's challenging, it's difficult. So yeah, absolutely. Let's see. Oh, everybody's favorite topic, the R3 revision. Yeah. How do we prepare our organization?
Yeah, I mean, I think with it being the draft already out for over a year, we're moving into the second. As I had mentioned, some organizations have already started to, I mean, down to even just, again, terminology changes, but some of the bigger things, I mean, this was, it was originally, the draft was released right post, again, talking about like remote working. And so a lot of focus on risk-based approaches. And that's really been the past couple of years, since 2023 and last year, a lot of what we have supported our organizations and clients was finding ways to first define criteria around how they would approach risk-based management of the TMF, again, down to whether it be the ongoing TMF reviews and oversight of it, or even just the processing of documents, things like that. So it's first defining what those criteria are and the risks. I also know that in general, for one of our clients, they included TMF, like the continuous like risk assessments that like an organization has to do or needs or should really be doing. TMF is now its own category, which was kind of cool, versus kind of lumping it into all the different other functions as far as risks in how often do they do their reviews? What is your oversight? Stuff like that. So those are all things that we're already seeing and have supported, and are for the ones that have implemented it, we are doing the actual services of performing those TMF reviews and coming up and working with the clients on criteria and as needed shifting criteria. So that's just one aspect of like the R3 release is the risk-based reviews. But that's why I decided to focus on, because it has been such a key thing over the past couple of years, and just helping clients to determine what that looks like and the examples that you could use. And after each round, you would pivot as needed based on what results you find or what the outputs are and findings of your reviews or oversight of the TMF.
It's interesting to hear you give that, Janice, because I hadn't really thought about it, but it is one, the clients you're talking about are the more mature clients. And that really is the natural trajectory that you would expect. That 20 years ago, the TMF was this nebulous dark corner. Nobody knew exactly what it was. It was something you did on top of your job. After you were done with your tasks, you threw the documents in, a repository. In some cases, it literally was a banker's box under your desk. So it was this nebulous black hole. Nobody knew really anything about it. And as we started to understand and realize, oh my goodness, this is our deliverable. This is what actually allows us, that permits the evaluation of the conduct of the trial by the regulatory agencies. So as we came to that realization, there was this, I think, almost a bit of freak out. We can't see into that at all. We don't know anything about it. And so it was kind of, as the pendulum swings, almost an overreaction as far as we've got to look at every single document, open every single document, and double check everything 6 times. And then after that phase comes okay, this isn't really efficient, guys. That maybe we can curtail some of this excessiveness. And so then it really was refining that process, fine-tuning it to actually assess your own environment, to determine what your risks are, where you put your focus. And so I think that is the natural evolution that we would expect to see. And then those clients that we have that are at that phase now, that those are the more mature clients. And I'm really glad we could help them get there.
Yeah.
The only thing I do want to add to preparation, because when change happens, right, sometimes I always say change is different, right? It's not better, it's not worse, it's not easier. And I think that's something we need to work on, is our messaging around how R3 might impact our organization. I think we probably would all agree that I don't think for most established organizations, R3 is going to cause significant disruption kind of to the day-to-day workflow of how we manage the trial master file. There'll be some changes that we'll make. But we need to make people aware of what those changes are and communicate that and how they're impacted. And so for me, that's something that I think we should prioritize in 2025 as well, as our messaging to folks and that collaboration that we do. Because when we oversell things, it's going to be so much easier. It's going to be so much better. The moment it's not, or it's different and they perceive it to not be great, that's when you're going to run into those issues. So as part of your preparation, obviously think about the messaging as well and how people are impacted, because you can update that process all day long. But if people don't respond positively to it, it really does you no good there. So that's the only other thing I would add to round it out.
Great.
Perfect. Oh my gosh, I can't believe we're fast approaching.
I know.
I know. I'll quickly answer this one. Where do students end up working?
Great.
Yeah, it's a little bit everywhere. So it's not even CRO sponsors. We also see vendors like ETMF vendors. They would work there and collaborate with sponsors and CROs. We've had folks at sites participate. So it's a little bit of everything. So it's not to necessarily say the university prepares you to go into a CRO or go into a sponsor. It's really with any realm of the industry that focuses on like documentation management, TMF management. So vendors, CROs, sponsors would all you'd probably be set up for success to join those organizations.
Well, and even beyond joining, that I wouldn't say that TMF University is your ace in the hole to get a job in TMF either. That TMF University is also hugely beneficial for people who are already in the field. That when I first took TMFU, gosh, that was 8 years ago. It was a minute ago. I was both simultaneously thrilled and hugely disappointed. Thrilled that it existed at all, hugely disappointed that it was 12 years too late for me, because I had to learn all of this stuff the hard way, because there is no other TMFU, right? And I remember I had just recently started LMK, and I was just gushing about, this is so awesome. It's all the information just on a silver platter. It's not like you have to take 12 years dealing with one problem after the other ad hoc to dig in to find out how all the pieces work together. So I would, in fact, I think we have a recommended, isn't it a year or 2 years recommended before you enroll in TMFU? So I don't know that I would recommend enrolling in TMFU if you don't have any clinical knowledge or clinical experience, because it may be beyond you.
Yeah, and we've set it up like you could have no experience, just for anybody who's like, oh, I don't have much experience. We've had great success. It's how you apply yourself to the program. So we typically recommend start with the discovery level, because that's going to be the foundational aspect of things. And as you progress, immersion and mastery can be added on. But you could be successful with, literally, we've had people who are green, no experience in the industry, and then gone on to interviews and were able to talk about what they learned in TMF University. We've got the more veteran folks who are able to kind of change their perspective of things. So yeah, it's a little bit for everyone. Let's see.
Oh, and we are at time, folks.
I know. This could be our last one. And then I know we've had some other questions we can follow up with as well.
Yes, we absolutely do. We have robust TMF review tools, templates that we work, over the years. We've collected the same way that how TMF University content has, was prepared. We took all of the experience of including us here and our experts, to put together, robust TMF review tools and a template. But the caveat to that is it's exactly that. It's a template meant to be customized, to the organization, but it has the what we would expect to do if we were to do reviews. And we customize it to the needs, as well as the landscape, the TMF landscape and environment of that organization. But yeah, we definitely have that, yes. And it's a template.
As well as not one size fits all.
As well as we may have trackers. I did want to mention too, but we also want to, as we can, and depending on the functionality of the eTMF, if the organization uses an eTMF system, we'll leverage the functions there in order to develop like outputs or develop ways or enter information there. So while we do have, LMK has a tracker as a starting point or a template, we also leverage, again, like the eTMF system and the capabilities there. So it's a hand in hand.
Cool.
Very much.
But yeah,
it's bespoke to your organization. I mean, we have a starting point. That's why we call them templates. But it's that risk assessment. Why would I create a tracker if I have edit rights in your system? I can replicate that tracker by pulling a report after I do the review in the system. So that's not an efficient process to track externally something that I'm already doing internally to an eTMF that has the automation that eliminates the need for an external tracker. So it's that risk assessment. What is the most efficient, most beneficial process given your situation? And I think it's that customization piece that is the most impactful.
Yeah. Perfect. And I know we're at the end of our time, and I know we've got a few questions coming here fast and furious, but I think what we can do is take those offline and follow up with those individuals directly. So so for those that have made comments, we'll make sure that we work together to get that information over. I know there was like tracker questions, TMF University questions, and maybe that's more ideas for us for webinars and things that we host and go through in the future. So yeah, absolutely. I've appreciated the engagement today and the lots of questions. I think this is kind of the most engaging session that I've been a part of. So I guess Janice and Ruby, you two are the ones that really do it. Because when I'm by myself,
this trio. No, it's this trio.
The terrific trio. That's what we'll be.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. So thank you so much, everyone.
Yes, absolutely. Thanks for signing up, because I am willing to stop working to just chat about the TMF anytime. So keep those registrations rolling in.
Perfect.
Thanks, everyone.
Yeah. Thanks, everybody. Have a good one.
Bye.
Happy 2025 to everybody.
Last time. Happy New Year.